In 1890, a ship from Argentina was sailing to New Orleans carrying a big shipment of sugar canes. But this ship was carrying some other unexpected things. These unexpected things being argentine ants. Soon these ants would start a conquest that lasts to this very day, with some more recent twists maybe changing the entire situation that they're in. This is Billy, an Argentine ant that lives in, you guessed it, Argentina. Here, Billy has to face some extreme challenges. Keeping a colony alive in these regions is an extremely tall task, even with their ability to have multiple queens. But Billy does his duty as part of the colony like everyone else. He fights in many battles, but it is difficult, since their species is relatively weak and small, even for ants. They attack other Argentine ant colonies which are genetically too separated from themselves. Species like the fire ants, with their much larger size, more strength, and their massive stingers, cause a real threat and a lot of trouble for Argentine ants. But through coordination, determination, and teamwork, Argentine ants manage to make a living even in these extremely harsh environments. But everything changes when Billy, along with a few of his friends, stumble on a boat. What they soon discover is that boats sometimes leave the connection to land. So now they are stuck at sea, and they are stuck like this for multiple months until they arrive to a very strange land indeed. Here, it isn't nearly as dense as in their original home, and they quickly find out that the competition is much less fierce and much weaker. They appoint a few females as the new queens and quickly start their conquest. They expand rapidly, destroying many local species in the process, and by 1905, they reach California. This is now undoubtedly a super colony. The reason they can do this is because they have no genetic diversity, meaning that every single one of the ants that lives in the US is derived from the same colony with the exact same genetics, essentially. Now, by this time, Billy is dead. Buried deep underground, his memory will not be forgotten, so let's follow a new hero, Jimmy. Jimmy was born in California, far from his homeland, but he's not concerned with sentimental things like that because he's more concerned about being on the front lines of a war on the locals where every year over 30 million of his friends die. But the super colony produces a constant supply of soldiers, and that is most definitely needed for their expansion. They also use chemical warfare. How they do this is by spraying a kind of acid on their targets, and this, first off, usually weakens the target's senses and also signals to their fellow Argentine ants that the one sprayed in acid is an enemy, because it gives off a very strong scent. Usually this target is much larger than the ants themselves, so what they do is they surround the target and start pulling off the limbs. Once the limbs are pulled off, they close in with their superior numbers and they finish the target off. Soon, this conflict across the Golden State becomes the largest non-human conflict in the world. Over a century has passed since then, and now there is a super colony in the West Coast stretching 600 miles, absolutely squashing many local species with an iron fist. But they have also made allies and cut alliances with aphids. Aphids produce a sweet secretion when they eat plant matter, which the ants use to feed their larvae and themselves sometimes. In exchange, the ants provide protection to the aphids, and this has become a huge problem in agriculture in California actually, because too many aphids means that the crops won't grow properly. But we're not concerned with that. What we're concerned with is the fact that this empire has reached its absolute peak. But it has become so much more now. Inevitably, some other ants also stumble on boats, and these boats take them all over the globe, making them a global threat now. The Mediterranean, South Africa, Japan, South Korea, and China, Australia and New Zealand all have accomplished super colonies. They all house accomplished colonies. They have also been seen in the Galapagos, which is incredible because the Galapagos is one of the most conservationally and environmentally protected places on Earth. I mean, most people have to go into like a week of quarantine before stepping on the island, I believe, or it's some sort of rule like that. And these ants have even managed to make their way there, which is a real concern right now there. Mind you, all of this started with a few ants stumbling on a boat more than 100 years ago, and now they have become one of the most destructive invasive species on the planet. They have become the villains of their own stories, wreaking havoc on any ecosystem that they touch. Let's go back to the California super colony, where we follow a new protagonist. Let's call him Joe. Joe grew up in the best time of the empire, having access to 600 miles of territory and billions of family members. He grew up thinking that nothing could challenge them, that they were undefeatable, that their conquest would never stop, that they were... Joe grew up around Salt Lake City, a very prosperous part of the empire indeed. While Joe is young, he fights in a few battles, which are won quite easily. The locals are so much more primitive than them, they're so much more less organized. So who could possibly challenge them? It seems like nobody, except for themselves. You see, over the course of a century, some parts of the empire have had less and less contact with each other, and over the course of many decades, these parts of the empire have slowly begun to genetically differentiate themselves from their other half, meaning that by now, they don't see each other as family anymore. This means civil war. The area around Salt Lake City is a prime location for this, and now the empire faces its first major challenge. But they've also been hearing whispers from their neighbors in the south. A new enemy from an old era has shown their ugly faces again. You see, Argentinian ants aren't the only ants that stumble on boats. Fire ants also stumbled on a few boats and made their way to the US, and now they are devastating the super colony in Texas. With their superior size and stingers, these lazy Argentinian ants aren't a match for them. They never had to face an enemy like this, whereas the fire ants, which are fresh off the boats, still grew up in the harsh South American environment. And now they are taking big chunks away from their old enemy's territory. As Joe is on the battlefield, he gets ambushed by 6 members of the other army of Argentine ants. Could his death represent the downfall of the largest non-human society we've ever seen? Only time will tell. But one thing is for sure. This empire is being tested like it has never been before. And we'll see what comes out the other side. But if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, do whatever you want, and have a good day. I'll see you in the next video.